Natural Law, Class 12. All right. Now, we're moving through natural law. We finished mercy killing and divorce as far as the particulars. And the last 3 points are on birth control, abortion, and racism. Racism being interesting is that the little book that I was using by Father Raymond Smith was written in 1960, and that was the big topic of the time. As we know from reading our friend Flannery O'Connor, a lot of her stories have to do with not only, she wasn't a moral voice condemning racism. What she was observing is the simple-minded activity of liberals trying to prove that they were enlightened and not racist. That's really the enduring chill. That's really what's happening there. It's one of the funniest stories ever written. How come he's so ugly to his mama? She didn't whip him enough when he was little. He's trying to impress the black guys, and the black guys think he's a sap. So anyway, it's boy, if she were alive today, the thing she would be writing about. So when we come to birth control, contraception, abortion, we are looking again, and Dr. Waters especially really made this principle that we judge the morality of an act by its end. What is the purpose of it? And if what you're doing is accords with the end of the nature of the act or the purpose of the act, then you're in harmony with nature, with the natural law. And if you act in the opposite way, then you are in defiance, not in compliance with natural law, with the nature of it. To give a really simple example, let me see if I can find it. I can't use this one. Okay. Well, just this pencil. Okay. Here's a pencil. Now, is it a good pencil? Well, we answer that question by what is the purpose of a pencil?
To write and erase.
The purpose of the pencil is to write and erase. Does it write and does it erase? Yes, it does. Therefore, it is a good pencil. Okay. Is it a good boomerang?
No.
No, because you're using it for something for which it was not made. It's against its nature. Is it a good can opener?
I think not, Prime Minister.
No, it's not a good can opener. And what happens if you use it as a can opener?
It breaks.
Not only that, but what?
It breaks.
What? Yeah.
Oh, it no longer is good for its regular purpose.
No, what else? It doesn't open the can.
Oh.
It doesn't open the can, and you destroy the pencil. So it's acting according to its nature, and it doesn't fulfill the one that I, in my wisdom, said, yes, there is no nature to anything, so if I want to use this pencil as a can opener, then because I want it and I say so, therefore it can happen. Good. It's going to be the way it is. And this is really the main clash of the two worldviews. The natural law worldview is very much in the minority at the moment because it's not being taught. What we have is the triumph of subjectivism. I have the right to do what I want to do because I want to do it, and you cannot tell me otherwise because you have no right to tell me otherwise. That's true for you, it's true for me, not true for me. It's true for you and not for me. It's true for you, okay? It's true for you, it's not true for me. Pope Benedict XVI coined a term, the dictatorship of relativism. It's a pretty good term. I was always the stabbing part of that is he failed to admit how much his enthusiasm for the Vatican II disaster ushered in this dictatorship of relativism. But it's very much connected to and the result of the new spirit of the council. But I won't go into that now because this is philosophy. So yeah, he sounded good saying the dictatorship of relativism, but he still clung to the council that really really pushed this relativism. And it did it by an overemphasis on the human. It did it by exalting the secondary over the primary. The rights of God are primary, the rights of the human are secondary, and Vatican II, in many ways, reversed that when it says that every man has the right to practice publicly whichever religion he thinks is best, which is really what came out of the document of religious liberty. You have endorsed relativism. And Father Yves Congar said, yes, the Vatican II position is different because the old position centered on the rights of objective truth. He understood. The Vatican II position focuses on primarily the ontological value of the human person. You've just endorsed relativism. The individual, what the individual thinks is true, has to be it has to be respected in a way that you can't, you have to respect people even if they believe wrongly, but you don't say that they have a right to believe something that's a lie. That is the proper way is the primacy of objective truth. So anyway, so that's what you'll find. And our friend who was here last week, who stayed with us, Dr. P, who stayed with us and who teaches at that awful Jesuit university, and he says this is what the students are filled to the eyeballs with. Relativism, subjectivism. I want to do what I want to do, and I have the right to do it because I want to do it, and no one has the right to tell me otherwise. Okay, and that also what the bishop said, when you have no more virtue of the people, and everybody just really wants to do what they want to do, but you need to have order in society, this is what causes strong state tyrannical laws. It's the fist of the law that pounds you down and keeps you in order. Because the virtue is no longer coming from the inside of the person, now it has to be imposed from the outside. You will do this, you will not do this, or there's fines and penalties attached. Now granted, we always have law, but law was always meant to aid the person and aid society, the order of society. The individual person didn't rely on government law to direct his morality to this extent. Okay. So, anyway, these are just some of the consequences of ignoring natural law. But that relativism is what's out there. It's what they get on television, it's what they get in universities, it's what they get in kindergarten. So, anyway, this brings us to, we're going to cover actually birth control and abortion quickly because we just had it when we did the Catechism on Marriage. We just did it. But it is a principle, again, it's one of those magnificent principles of reason that Dr. Waters always insisted upon. Okay, that's the beginning of it. Can you finish it?
I'm finishing it right now. It is never lawful to exercise an act and reject the act for which the act is designed.
The end.
And
You said act by accident.
accident.
By accident.
Act.
It is never lawful to exercise an act and reject the end for which the act is designed. Keep that principle in mind, and it will be a principle that helps you your entire life. Not only to look on the outside and gauge whether what's going on here or there, this is right, but also in your own personal life. It's never lawful to exercise an act and reject the end for which the act is designed. Even before we get to birth control and abortion, in relation to this, I think I talked about this before, that this is really the natural law argument for telling the truth. Because what is the purpose of speech? The purpose of speech is to speak truly, to speak what is true. And so if a person is lying, then he is operating contrary to the nature of speech. So it's never lawful to exercise an act and reject the end for which the act is designed. When the person lies, he is rejecting the end for which speech is designed, which is the communication of truth. And a person does not have to be a religious man to recognize this. Nobody, you hear high school freshman girls and their little cliques talking, oh, she's a liar. I can't trust her. She's a liar. She told me this, but it wasn't true. Okay? They know they don't want to deal with someone who lies. Even a group of, whether it be Catholic schoolgirls or Protestant schoolgirls or neo-pagan schoolgirls. Okay? They know they don't want to deal with someone who doesn't tell the truth because they can't be trusted. Instinctively, they know that principle, that it's never lawful to exercise an act and reject the end for which the act is designed. In this case, speech and truth-telling. So, this is why we talk about the fact that when you say, one of the reasons why people don't like natural law arguments is it pulls us away from just saying, well, this is my religious belief that telling a lie is wrong. This is simply my religious belief that contraception is wrong. This is simply my religious belief that abortion is wrong. We're still, when you talk like that, you're still in the realm of subjectivism. Okay. And I remember dear Father Buckley, who was the one who actually introduced me to Thomism, talking about the fact that faith is knowledge. It's not a vacuous or simple belief the way a 3-year-old believes in the Easter Bunny. Okay, it is knowledge. What's the definition of faith?
Faith is the adherence of our intellect to a truth revealed by God.
The adherence of our intellect to a truth revealed by God. God tells us something. We recognize it came from God. We know that God is a God who can neither deceive nor be deceived. We know that God is a God of love, who is telling us these things, these truths that first of all emanate from his nature, and secondly for our good. We recognize all that, and then we make the intellectual judgment, yes, this is true, I accept it. Faith is in the assent. I assent, I judge, and I accept that this is true, and I will accept it. It's an objective reality that has nothing to do with you and me, really. If either one of us, if any of us in this room never existed, those truths would still be true. It has nothing to do with us. Okay, so this is the objective reality. Natural law puts certain moral behavior in that realm of objectively true, objectively good, objectively bad. And this is what people don't like. They won't mind you saying, and sometimes too, that's where you have to start with people. I've done it myself. When it comes to, for example, talking to someone about the old Mass and the new Mass. I'll tell you, someone who goes to the new Mass, I never say, you shouldn't be doing that. Never. Because they'll fight back. And then you're invading your turf. What I do say is, I never go to the old Mass. I never go to the new Mass. I only go to the old Mass. And here are the reasons why. A lot of times that's how you have to start with people. Whatever received
is received in the manner of the recipient.
Is received in the manner of the recipient. Oftentimes you do have to start from a subjective level, but as I always say, it's not a bad place to start, it's just a bad place to stay, especially personally. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's never lawful to exercise an act and reject the end for which the act is designed. I'm going to go through the exercise you've heard me give before, how this applies to eating. Okay, and we just had oatmeal for breakfast, well, at least Philomena and me.
I did not.
We had
Neither
oatmeal
did
for
I.
breakfast. Okay, now suppose I was invited somewhere and they served me oatmeal. Now I like oatmeal. And, oh, it's good. And I would take a spoonful of, this is really good. Oh, God, I love oatmeal with the maple syrup and a little butter. And I spit it out. and take another spoonful. Boy, this is really great, and I extract all the pleasure and goodness out of it, and then spit it out, and I do it again, and I do it again. I would be asked to leave the house. And the lady of the house who invited me would say, never come back. And then they would get on Facebook and said, he was at my house, and it would spread all over the world, right? Okay. So, yeah, why? Because the hostess would be justifiably insulted. And the hostess would be right to say, get out of here. This is disgusting. This is revolting. Not so much because of the blob that I'm spitting onto the table. Okay, that's part of the disgust. But because of what I'm doing is contrary to the nature of eating. It's never lawful to exercise an act and reject the end for which the act is designed. Okay? Very simple. Now, I'm not going to go into detail, but the act of marriage, the purpose of that act is for the conception, begetting of children. It's never lawful to exercise that act and reject the end for which the act is designed. And if you engage in any sort of contraception, you are doing exactly what I'm doing with the oatmeal. You're deriving all the good and pleasure from the act and rejecting the end for which the act is designed. Okay, now the argument against birth control is the same argument against rainbow. It's the homosexuality. It covers all perversions of the marital act, every one of them. It's never lawful to exercise an act and reject the end for which the act is designed. Okay, and when we did the catechism class, I'm not going to do them here, but we also saw that the Catholic Church itself also teaches it from Scripture. Even our friend Minister Pavin, I forget his name, he teaches it from the Bible. He's a Protestant, and he teaches against birth control from the Bible. And the Catholic Church teaches it from the Bible, and teaches it from the Magisterium from day one. Okay, never lawful to exercise an act and reject the end for which the act is designed. It's really rather simple. I had to wait until I was in Dr. Waters' class at age, 50, before I ever heard that principle. I went to 12 years of Catholic school. Never got it. And this is why people are confused, and this is why we can't be too hard on people who are confused. They're not getting truth. Everything we talked about in the previous classes about Cardinal Burke. Cardinal Burke saying the people are not being taught. The men are not being taught how to be men. They're not being catechized. Okay. So, very simple. I don't need to belabor the point. This is the main argument from nature, from natural law, against abortion. Actually, Dr. Waters' argument and Dr. Predates' arguments are actually better than Father Smith's arguments in the book. That's why I'm using Dr. Waters and Dr. Predates. Primarily Dr. Waters, I should say, because he always operated on principles of reason. Now, of course, we move into what we learned in Roman history of the Romans who would gorge themselves with food and then go to the vomitarium and tickle the back of the throat and spill out all the food that they had eaten just to go back and have more. Okay? It's revolting. It's against nature. It's never lawful to exercise an act and reject the end for which the act is designed, but this is just a basic natural law argument also against abortion. Okay, there has been conception, there is a baby in the womb, and now they are hiring a doctor or using some sort of device to kill that baby because they don't want it. They've exercised the marital act and rejected the end for which the act is designed. And also there is the added layer of direct murder of the most innocent and the most helpless. And modern governments give special protection and special right to that act of direct murder. And they put us in jail if we protest too much against it. Okay. Isaiah said, woe to those who say good is evil and evil is good. And that's a lot of where we are right now. Barack Obama, of course, the most pro-abortion senator and the most pro-abortion president, always comes to the rescue if anything regarding abortion is in trouble with any sort of congressional legislation or whatever. And he always does it, not within the... He never talks about murder. Remember we talked about before, separated the notion of abortion from the notion of killing? He talks it within the context of woman's reproductive rights. That's the term you'll hear. Women's reproductive rights. What does it come down to? What I open the class with? I have the right to do whatever I want to do because I want to do it. And there is no objective law. There's certainly no God in heaven with his 10 commandments telling me what I can't do. So, very simple. Abortion is 100 times worse, thousands times worse than the voluntarian, but you see that they've already ingested the food and the digestion has already started, and now they interfere with that and cause it to be thrown out of their stomachs. Okay. Well, this is even worse because the baby is there, and either by a morning after pill of some sort that gets rid of the baby right away, or going in and surgically killing the baby, dismembering it, the type of thing that Abby Johnson saw on the ultrasound, is direct murder, and it's rejecting the end for which the act is designed. So, you understand that. I don't need to belabor that anymore. One of the ways, of course, that modern fighters, modern proponents of abortion, get their material through is, again, appeal to emotions. What about the life of the mother? That's how a lot of abortion legislation is passed. Yes, what about, in fact, this latest, no, I don't know that for certain, so I won't say it. But they make an exception in cases of rape and in cases of the life of the mother. You can't have any exceptions because you're still doing evil to achieve good. You're not talking about the principle of double effect here, where there is one act that has a good effect and an evil effect, and the evil follows the good. No, this is a direct killing. And yes, it's unfortunate, but you can't kill to deal with your own social problem or your own personal problem. So, Pope Pius XII dealt with this idea, because this is an old argument. In 1951, here is what he said about this idea that, well, you can perform an abortion to save the life of the mother. Here's the quotation. Let me get my glasses. Never and in no case has the Church taught that the life of the child must be preferred to that of the mother. It is erroneous to put the question with this alternative, either the life of the child or that of the mother. Now, what do I always say? We have to watch out the way...
Distinctions.
Not only distinction, but also the framework in which things are presented. Look, we either have to do this or we have to do that. And no one stands up and says, this is a false dichotomy. We're not dealing with either the life of the mother or the life of the child. Okay, there is a higher principle that we have to adhere to that goes beyond this. And Pius XII nails it. He says, no, neither the life of the mother nor that of the child can be subject to an act of direct suppression. In other words, you can't just kill either. In one case, as in the other, there is but one obligation: to make every effort to save the lives of both. Okay, now, doctors in emergency rooms, they might be forced to make some tough choices. The Church doesn't, is not going to give you every detail of every little thing that could possibly happen. But you don't start with the principle, look, we're going to save the life of the mother, so we kill the baby. No, you make every effort to save the life of both, because both are equal before God. Both have immortal souls, and also the baby is more helpless than the mother. So it's really an act of, they love the word bully, but it's the ultimate bullying, just to kill the baby. So anyway, yes, do you have a question?
Does Pope Francis, Brian, does he reject abortion?
Oh, yes, he does.
Okay.
Yeah. The problem is he talks about abortion, and then he goes on and talks about other things, and it's all talk. Now, what churchmen should do is, if you are a Catholic politician and you vote in favor of abortion, you may not receive the sacraments. That is actually enshrined in the new Code of Canon Law. I think it's Canon 315. That's the law of the Church. But we have no bishops, virtually no bishops, who will carry it out. Because if it does happen, the world's press, everybody will come crashing down on the bishop. That's why you need strong bishops. Now, Burke said this law has to be followed. And then you have these milky, rainbowish Cardinal Wuerl in Washington who says, "Oh, I don't think this is a truly pastoral approach." Okay, it's cowardice. It's simply cowardice on Wuerl's part. He makes himself sound virtue that I have found a superior way. No, he hasn't found a superior way. Babies are dying, and you're doing nothing about it. Okay, Burke wanted to do something about it. How about we enforce the existing law signed in by John Paul II in 1983? Saint John Paul now, according to many people. So there's a lot of what churchmen do anymore is just talk. But there's no follow-through. The Catholic politicians, Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, John Kerry, big names right now, all Catholic, all supporting abortions, all considered Catholics in good standing. Virtually no priest, well, I can't say no, but hardly any priest and hardly any bishop would refuse them communion because they are coward, human respect, and babies die. So it's one thing to say, yes, it's wrong, and Francis does that, but there's no real follow-through. They don't teach it and enforce it where it counts. So the final one that we'll talk about here is when Father Smith talks about segregation. And the fact that segregation itself actually is against the natural law. Because what he points out is that what is a basis of natural law is justice, the virtue of justice, which again is giving every man according to his due. The virtue of justice does not mean I have to make sure that my neighbor has the right to do whatever they want to do, whatever she wants to do because she wants to do it. Okay, that's not justice. That's just sheer self-indulgence. So, segregation. The idea of segregation must be filtered through the true principle of justice, and nature herself makes no distinction on basic rights, that everyone is truly equal. There were, even in the medieval time, there were some people who thought that the natives, when they would come to the country, because they were not quite civilized, then they were somehow subhuman. This was never the position of the church. In fact, some of the conquerors would use that as an excuse just to conquer the people.
And I just recently found out that Elizabeth Ann Seton, here in America, she was the first person ever to organize a school of some sort for both blacks and whites.
Yeah.
So the church was the first in opposing
The church
racism.
was the first because it recognized...
This was even before slavery.
Yeah. Slavery was here.
Well, I know, but before
the whole anti-slavery movement. The whole abolition movement. Yeah. And there are writings of the popes against the slave trade. Writing against the slave trade. So all men do have equal rights. Now he quotes the Declaration of Independence: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We have to really kind of make sure we mean life, genuine liberty, and the pursuit of
true happiness.
True happiness, yeah. life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, again, is now used to say, I have the right to do whatever I want to do because I want to do it. All right. But any legislation or civil law that impairs these basic rights is contrary to justice, contrary to natural law. What does segregation do? Well, it puts the stamp of inferiority on a certain group of people simply because they belong to that certain group of people. That's never permissible. Also, natural law demands that debts be paid to whomever we have incurred a debt. Okay, you don't say, well, you're Irish, so I'm not going to pay my debt to you, or you're Italian, or you're black, or you're Hispanic or Oriental. Okay, so it's all based on the virtue of justice. Man has a common origin and a common destiny. All men are endowed with certain rights by nature. Accidental differences, which is what race is. In essence, we are all human, made in God's image and likeness, with immortal souls to get to heaven. And that's why, too, the church, as you said with Elizabeth Ann Seton, were the past masters of educating everyone, not just educating the upper crust. Elizabeth Ann Seton, as you said. But one of the things I was getting at, too, is some of the conquerors would try to claim that these people are kind of subhuman and therefore we can just kind of stamp them out and take their land. And it was the churchmen who were opposing this. The bishops were saying, no, you have to treat everyone with respect. You just don't take things from people. You have to pay for it, or, you know, that's even in Henry V during war, when they're invading France. He tells the soldiers, nothing taken but paid for. You just don't pillage. Okay, so that all is in part with the virtue of justice. Argue from the natural law, we come to the conclusion that cooperation among all people should be natural, and all oppression and curtailment of rights should be outlawed. Now, one of the problems is the way the United States dealt with these things was in very stupid ways. They brought in something called affirmative action, that a business had to hire a certain amount of minorities. That can, if it's not done right, properly, that can just trade one set of problems with another. Because if you want to kind of balance an injustice, maybe you could have some sort of things, okay, you should have a certain amount of minorities represented. But what happened was businesses started to hire on the base of race alone, even if the person was not competent, because they had to fulfill. They took a very mathematical approach to the problem. We have 100 white guys, we should have at least 25 blacks, and maybe this how many. And they just worked it out that way, and hiring incompetent people. Now, it is not difficult to find people of any ethnic group that are competent at what they do. And that has to be the criteria. Otherwise, this is an act of injustice to the corporation or business itself. That, if you remember, the part is for the sake of the whole, and the individual part has to work well in order to serve the whole properly. So you can't have a whole group of people who are incompetent that you hired simply based on race. This is not just. The employers will have to have the right to insist that whoever they hire has the proper qualifications. Now, of course, the other side steps in and says, "Oh, well, this is just racism on coming back again because you're going to find that you're going to claim that the only white male." I mean, it takes you into a whole conundrum. I don't want to get into all the difficulties, but some of this enforced fixing of racism has turned out to be a real nightmare. Because basically, a lot of it's just done by godless people. And as I said, if the virtue doesn't come from the inside, then it has to be enforced from the outside. Anyway, I think we have to stop. And we'll have probably just one more class, because kind of doing a summation of natural law. So this is really not a complete ethics course. It's kind of an introduction to various aspects of ethics. But I think it's given you some of the basic principles. Mm-hmm. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, amen. Sound production, Oltyn Library Services, all rights reserved. This recording may not be reproduced without explicit permission of Oltyn Library Services, www.oltyn.org.